It started with a flicker. Not in the lights, those haven't worked right since the third merger, but in the payroll queue. Claire saw it at 3:17 p.m., buried 6 command layers deep like a tremor before a landslide. It was a small authorization failure flagged as non-critical, but Claire had written that logging system herself. If it was whispering, the rest of the stack was already screaming in a language only she spoke. She didn't panic. Panic's for people who don't have root access and a backup drive labeled in case of morons. Instead, Claire leaned back in her chair, the one with a snapped armrest and a seat cushion that had long since surrendered, and lit the cinnamon-scented candle from her daughter's failed Etsy shop. The fluorescent light above her flickered like it owed someone money. In the distance, she could hear someone microwaving salmon. Again, outside her office. If you could call the supply closet with a LAN rack in office, the freshly minted HR drones pranced past, holding oversized Stanley tumblers and talking about rebranding human capital into a feeling. Claire didn't bother to decipher that word salad. These were the same people who thought Git was a British insult and once asked her if VPN was a gender identity. 17 years. That's how long she'd held this Frankenstein of a system together with gum, rage, and undocumented scripts written at 3 a.m. on Red Bull in spite. She wasn't in the promo photos. She didn't show up in company birthday slideshows. But when servers hiccuped, when email died, when payroll bounced, it was always, call Claire. No one asked where she was, just assumed she'd be there. Like plumbing, like gravity. But now, Claire was a process bottleneck, a legacy knowledge silo, a culture misfit, or as the new HR director, Madison Klein, fresh from an MBA in transformational empathy and 2 years of absolutely nothing, put it, an artifact of a more rigid era. Claire wasn't shocked. She'd been watching it unfold. The moment Madison came in with her manicured nails and her culture is code slides, Claire started noticing things. Longtime engineers quietly shown the door, decades of process replaced with agile rituals nobody understood, entire subsystems reassigned to interns who couldn't spell Linux. Still, Claire kept quiet, observed, noticed how the old badge scanner had been replaced with a cloud-based solution no one had vetted, how VPN traffic spiked every Friday at 4 p.m. like clockwork, how a certain exec's access logs showed more hours on Candy Crush than Confluence. She wasn't bitter. She was ready. By the way, quick side note while I've got your attention, 97% of folks listening to stories like this never actually hit that subscribe button. Wild, right? If this saga's got your curiosity cooking, or you've ever wanted to see corporate karma unfold with surgical precision, go ahead and subscribe. Seriously, it fires up the team like a triple espresso on deadline day. Back to Claire. She didn't show anger. That wasn't her thing. But when the COO, Greg Summers, the human equivalent of unbuttered toast, told her they'd be evaluating her alignment with future-facing priorities, she calmly printed out every system diagram she'd ever built, walked into his office and laid them down like tarot cards. His eyes glazed over halfway through subnet mapping. He blinked. I'm sure the new team can. Figure it out. Claire smiled. I'm sure they'll try. Then she returned to her desk, fired off a few quiet backup jobs, disabled her tracking on internal Slack threads, disconnected one critical analytics pipeline, and labeled the error API deprecation. No one would even notice for a while. She kept working, not because she thought it would save her job, but because it was hers. The chaos held together by her hands, the duct-taped truth beneath the polished facade. No one ever said thank you, but when the light stayed on, that was her thank you. At 5:42 p.m., she got the invite, a compliance review with HR the next morning. No agenda, no prior discussion. The invite came with a read receipt on a weekend that alone told her everything. Claire didn't flinch, just made one final update to a private access script. Then she carefully removed a small black drive from her desk drawer, tucked it into a padded envelope, and slid it into her purse. No label, no markings, just 17 years of secrets and sovereignty. They'd find out what it was when it was already too late, and she'd be watching. Madison Klein entered Larkwell like a power-walking podcast, bright, relentless, and suspiciously confident for someone who thought Raid was a nightclub. She wore heels too loud for a carpeted office and carried a clipboard like it was a weapon. Her smile had that botox sheen, all shine and zero warmth, like someone who practiced empathy in the mirror but never quite stuck the landing. The first thing she did was hold a town hall in the break room, where she used phrases like synergizing human assets and desiloing morale infrastructure without choking. By the end of the meeting, half the room was wondering if they still had jobs. The other half had already updated their LinkedIns. Claire didn't attend. She watched from her second monitor, where the security feed from the break room was still connected from the last internal audit. Claire didn't believe in coincidences, or culture refreshes, or any HR leader who used the word grit in a PowerPoint without irony. By Tuesday, Madison had already fired 3 people. Frank from compliance gone, 2 analog, he used post-its. Dana from QA cut, low cross-functionality, whatever the hell that meant. Then Raj from infrastructure. He was the last guy who knew where the physical server backups were stored. Apparently that was now non-strategic. The firings weren't clean. Claire knew because every offboarding left digital debris, a zombie login here, an unrevoked SSH key there. She swept them up like broken glass in a kitchen after a tantrum. Silently, alone, On Wednesday, Claire got the email. Subject line, Process Transparency Initiative Body. Hi Claire, hope you're doing great, smiling face with smiling eyes, as part of our exciting new shift to a more resilient, agile tech culture. We're asking team leads to fully document all workflows, system accesses, and toolkits. Please include full credentials where applicable so our new infrastructure team can proactively shadow your processes. Let's make knowledge communal flex briefcase sparkles. It was signed with a bitmoji of Madison throwing virtual confetti. Claire stared at it for a full 5 minutes, not because she was surprised, but because it confirmed what she'd already mapped out. They were prepping to cut her loose. The documentation request wasn't about transparency, it was a heist. Claire had seen this move before, twice. Once in 2009, when the company tried to outsource Tier 1 support to a call center in Tulsa and ended up breaching HIPAA. And again in 2015, when a consulting firm convinced the C-suite that SharePoint could replace actual humans. She replied curtly, understood, documentation in progress. Eat a Friday out, then she opened a fresh terminal window. First, she reviewed her contingency folder. Encrypted backups up to date, access tokens, rotating, double salt, root scripts, stored on an air-gapped device nicknamed Cerberus. She moved like someone folding a parachute while the plane's engine sputtered. That night, Claire ran a deep audit of all system logs involving Madison. Her new account, ClientMadmin, had already accessed the finance server, HR permissions, and one strange attempt to probe the payroll API. Claire raised an eyebrow. Madison didn't know how to run a macro in Excel, but she was already poking around Larkwell's most sensitive data like a raccoon in a kitchen drawer. She made a note, and Claire did something no one had ever asked her to do in 17 years. She wrote down everything. Not for them, for her, a guide, a manifesto, an autopsy report in waiting. System override chain begins at gatekeeper script, requires double auth from local node and server cert signed pre-2020. Root authenticator handshake initiates failsafe protocol on disconnect. If you're reading this, someone made a dumb decision. She smiled, not out of joy, but out of pity. Let them fire her. Let them call her abrasive, outdated, non-collaborative. She had always been alone in that server room. The only difference now was that someone finally noticed and thought it meant she was expendable. They didn't understand what she was, but they would, soon. The hallway outside the COO's office always smelled like burnt coffee and broken promises. Claire stood there for 5 full minutes before knocking, partly to collect her thoughts, partly because she knew Greg Summers hated being interrupted during his 3:00 p.m. meditation playlist. She knocked anyway. "Come in," came the weary voice, already annoyed. She stepped inside. Greg didn't look up from his phone. "Got a minute?" she asked, holding a printed network audit in one hand. The report outlined every failed login attempt, every anomaly since Madison started her little crusade. She'd even highlighted the unauthorized probe into their client-facing VPN. Greg finally looked up, squinting. His reading glasses were still on top of his head. "Claire, I'm swamped. Can we make this quick?" She placed the audit on his desk. "I think Madison's making changes she doesn't understand. She's already compromised one of the payment systems. If this continues, you won't just lose data, you'll lose clients. This isn't about resistance to change. This is about protecting the company from itself." Greg exhaled, leaned back, and pinched the bridge of his nose like he was handling a toddler throwing blocks. "Claire," he said slowly, "you've always been incredibly capable, but sometimes we need to let new leadership try things their way." She didn't respond. "Let's not resist just because it's unfamiliar. Madison has a vision. She's got the board's ear. It's not personal, it's just time to evolve." She stared at him, stunned by the laziness of it. Vision? The woman thought two-factor authentication meant bringing your phone charger to work. But Claire had seen this exact tone before, the faux empathy, the hands-off deflection dressed up as progress. Greg wasn't going to fight for her. Hell, he wasn't even listening. His eyes were already drifting back to his phone screen, probably checking Slack emojis in a thread titled #Monday Motivation. "Understood," she said, and walked out. She didn't slam the door, she didn't even sigh. She simply walked back to her desk and began the real shutdown sequence, not on the servers, but on herself. 22 minutes later, an email landed in her inbox. Subject, compliance review, immediate, no signature. Just a meeting link and a time. 10 minutes from now. She already knew what was coming. When she logged into the call, Madison was waiting, flanked by some HR puppet with a laminated handbook and the moral flexibility of a parking meter. "Hi, Claire," Madison said, chipper like a talk show host. "Thanks for hopping on so quickly. We just wanted to take a few minutes to touch base on some compliance and culture concerns." Totally routine. Claire stayed silent. Madison continued. "We've noticed a pattern of information bottlenecking that's, well, it's not really in line with our new value model. There's been feedback that you're not collaborating, not sharing knowledge freely, and in some cases, deliberately withholding documentation." Claire raised an eyebrow. "From whom?" Madison blinked. "Well, you know we can't disclose internal feedback sources, but the concern is that you're operating with a kind of territorial mindset. We need to be a company that flows, Claire, not one that clogs." "Interesting metaphor," Claire said flatly. Madison gave a polite chuckle. "Look, this isn't about blame, it's just Your methods are a little pre-cloud, you know? And frankly, the vibe you bring doesn't really align with our emotional fluency goals. Claire turned off her camera. Madison cleared her throat. Okay, so, we're going to move forward with a transition, effective immediately. You'll be receiving a severance package, generous, might I add, and we'll need you to clean your desk by end of day. Then came the final twist of the knife, dipped in sugar and condescension. Clean your desk, sweetheart. That word stuck. Sweetheart, like she was a confused waitress at a Waffle House, not the reason the building still had working electricity and functioning payroll. Claire said nothing. She clicked leave meeting, logged out of her system, pulled the Ethernet from the back of her tower. Then she opened her desk drawer. Nestled inside a hollowed-out manual labeled Windows 95 for Dummies was a slim, matte black drive. Root Authenticator, the heartbeat of the entire Larkwell stack. No one else knew it existed. No one else even knew what a failsafe handshake protocol was. She slid it into her purse like it was lip balm, grabbed her mug, took her cinnamon candle and walked out. No tearful goodbyes, no HR escort, just the rhythmic click of her boots on tile. As the elevator doors closed, Claire looked up at the security camera in the corner and gave it the faintest smirk. Let them reboot the servers. Let them scramble passwords, force resets, audit systems. They had no idea they'd just fired the last person who knew where the real skeletons were buried. And now, they were standing in the graveyard. Claire didn't go home. She hadn't really had a home in years, just a rental where the AC made death rattles and the neighbors grilled raccoons. Instead, she drove east. Long enough that the skyline was gone, the cell towers dropped to one bar, and the air tasted like dust and disuse. At a rundown roadside motel with cracked ice machines and cigarette burns in the sheets, she checked in under a name she hadn't used since 2007, Cassandra Lyons. That was the first name on her first firewall, felt poetic. She locked the door behind her, set the chain, pulled the curtains, took off her boots. Lit the same candle, cinnamon, comfort, ritual, and she pulled out the battered ThinkPad she'd kept in her go bag for emergencies. The kind of emergency that smells like silicon smoke and legal panic. Power on, fan whirs, OS boots into a stripped-down Linux distro no one but her has access to. She connects to the private access node, an off-the-grid server she rigged in a solar-powered shack 3 years ago during a particularly nasty audit scare. It blinks alive. Claire begins to watch. 3:12 a.m. Login attempt from Larkwell HQ. Madison's credentials. She's trying to access the financials dashboard. Denied. 3:13 a.m. Another attempt, this time with backup HR credentials. Denied. 3:15 a.m. Systems auto-trigger a permission reroute standard protocol when multiple failed logins occur on an admin chain. The reroute pings an endpoint. Claire's endpoint. A red flash appears on her monitor. Unauthorized redirection attempt. Gatekeeper failsafe initiated. She smiles. Not smug, not vengeful, just satisfied. The kind of smile that comes after 17 years of being dismissed and 2 weeks of being ignored. Another alert. VPN tunnel request, internal staff mobile device flagged IP, status auto-locked, reason handshake mismatch. MFA token denied, then it starts snowballing. The CRM goes read-only. Internal chat system locks out any account without verified biometric keys, which only Claire had authorization to update. Payroll server triggers a timeout loop due to dependency failures in the authenticator chain. That will trigger at least 5 compliance red flags before sunrise. Her fingers hover above the keyboard, not typing, just monitoring, watching a body that doesn't know it's dead yet start to twitch. It's not sabotage. She didn't plant a virus. She didn't tamper with anything. She left. And her system was built on trust, not documentation. Like a cathedral with no blueprint, it worked because she knew where each brick belonged. And now the bishop had been evicted. 4:02 a.m., Slack traffic spikes. Someone's waking up. Probably the overnight junior dev team trying to fix the login cascade by rebooting the cloud proxy. Claire sees the attempt, watches them loop into their own echo. System error, certificate expired system error. Certificate revoked by root authority system error. Root at Monroe local not found. That last one makes her laugh out loud. Just once, short, sharp. By 4:37 a.m., the system starts pinging dead links. Protocols from the Madison-led modernization attempt, poorly integrated, insecure, built like scaffolding made of spaghetti. Every one of those tools tried to call home. Home no longer had a mailbox. Claire wraps her hands around the motel's styrofoam cup. The tea inside is oversteeped and tastes like pencil shavings. She drinks it anyway. She could have shut it all down instantly. With one script, one command, she could have dropped them into digital purgatory. But that's not her game. Claire isn't the villain. She's the power that got unplugged. And now, in the void she left, the rats are chewing through the wires, blaming each other for the sparks. She doesn't touch the keyboard again, just watches, detached, calm. A woman who once held the wheel, and now watches the car skid into the dark. By 7:46 a.m., the help desk queue had collapsed into a digital dumpster fire. The intern manning Tier 1 support, Tyler, age 23, who once asked if Bash was a party theme, was crying into a subway napkin. Ticket subjects rolled in like a death toll. Can't log in. Again. Payroll error, missing gross pay field. CRM down, CEO screaming. Who deleted my access? Did Claire do this? Meanwhile, the Slack #IT alerts channel looked like a strobe light. Ping, ping, ping. Someone tried typing in all caps. Can we just undo whatever Claire did? But no one knew what she did, because Claire didn't leave instructions. Claire didn't leave anything, not out of malice, out of habit, out of necessity. Claire had spent nearly 2 decades being the human manual, the duct tape, the one who caught what everyone else missed. If she'd documented everything, she would have had to file 500 pages per week and hold the hands of people who didn't know the difference between a server and a microwave. So she built it herself, piece by piece, under her credentials, with her naming conventions. Scripts labeled "Don't touch this final actual v4, sh. Bash chains running on cron jobs set to her birth date. Firewall rules with port blocks only she understood. Authentication chains tied to a deprecated handshake protocol she custom patched in 2014 because nobody else cared to fix it. It wasn't sabotage. It was a system designed around her, because no one else ever stayed long enough to learn it, and now they were drowning in it. At 8:09 a.m., Madison sent the first of many company-wide emails. It began with a sunny header, an update on our path forward rocket sparkles, and spiraled into the kind of blame shifting that would make a politician blush. We want to acknowledge a temporary disruption in some of our internal systems. After auditing our current infrastructure, we've discovered that previous leadership failed to uphold proper knowledge-sharing protocols. While we continue to assess these legacy shortcomings, ask for your patience and encourage everyone to be solution-oriented during this exciting pivot. Exciting pivot. Payroll had failed to run for 218 employees. The CTO's account had locked him out of the dashboard. One team lead had gone on Reddit, live posting his meltdown in r/sysadmin under the title, "I think our whole company was a Claire dependency and now Claire's gone." At 9:02 a.m., Claire's phone buzzed. Unknown number. Text message, "It's Lucas. I know I shouldn't be reaching out, but what did you do?" Lucas had been her only real ally. Backend dev, good kid, smart, grew up in a farm town. Once spent 3 weekends helping Claire write a custom scheduler when a third-party vendor flaked out. He'd been the only one to say thank you in years. Claire stared at the message for a long moment, then typed her reply, "What they told me to." The dots blinked for a while, then nothing. No reply. She didn't need one. Instead, she glanced back at her screen. Watched the system logs tick by. The MFA daemon had entered a recursive error loop. The database access layer was now timing out every 4th query. Someone had tried to override the root at Monroe local flag with an unverified token and accidentally bricked an entire instance. Somewhere, a panicked junior dev had just rebooted a production server thinking it was staging. Watch the chaos not with glee but with calm, a quiet recognition. They had underestimated her because she never demanded attention, never stood in meetings and waved her arms, never demanded titles or raises or company hoodies. She just built the bones of the place, and now the bones were screaming. Claire opened her motel mini-fridge, pulled out a yogurt she didn't remember buying, and peeled it open. A small thing, a cold breakfast while Rome burned. And in the silence, faintest smile played across her lips. Not of revenge, just of clarity. They thought she could be replaced. They were learning otherwise. The calls started at 9:37 a.m., first from an unknown number, then from the main Larkwell office line, then from a blocked ID that screamed desperation. Claire let each one ring, her motel burner vibrating against the chipped nightstand like a dying beetle. She didn't even glance. Her tea was steeping. Her logs were humming, and her silence weaponized. By 10:11, they tried voicemail. "Claire, it's Greg. Hey, hoping we can have a quick chat. Just wanna clear the air. No pressure. Give me a ring, okay? Hope you're well. Bye. No pressure." Greg sounded like a man calling his mechanic 5 minutes before a road trip, knowing full well he'd ignored every blinking light on the dashboard. At 10:42, panicked junior sysadmin named Benny finally found the thread that unraveled the whole sweater. He had been combing through an archived YAML file labeled Sys Core Backup Autumn Legacy v2 final actual final YAML because the current documentation was useless, and he'd exhausted the company wiki's 3 helpful articles: how to reset your password, how to request PTO, and what is a firewall. Benny, sleep-deprived and held together by caffeine and fear, noticed a strange line deep in the override block. Root at Monroe local protected override. He squinted. Clicked it. Nothing. Encrypted, sealed, no explanation, just one unreachable node. He brought it to Madison, who read it 3 times and said, "Who the hell is Monroe?" That's when the silence finally cracked open. One of the senior devs, a guy with a beard full of anxiety and soylent, whispered, "That's Claire. Claire Monroe." Madison's face paled. At 11:17, legal began to panic. They hadn't drafted a proper separation clause. No one thought to include post-termination access contingencies. Claire had signed the basic NDA, sure, but she'd built the very infrastructure they were locked out of. And the contracts? Let's just say no one thought she needed micromanaging. She had always just handled it. Now it was unhandled, and Madison's head was in the guillotine. By noon, legal had written a desperate olive branch, an emergency access request, a meeting offer, and a proposed short-term contract with a compensation placeholder to be discussed. It was sent with urgency. It was met with nothing because Claire wasn't watching emails. She was already logged into her private node. Her screen blinked once. She opened a clean document, titled it Larkwell Triage Proposal PDF. She didn't write a letter. She didn't pad it with pleasantries or moral sermons. Just a 4-page bullet list. Emergency triage of infrastructure. $110,000 flat 10-day limited engagement, no NDA revisions root privileges, reinstated exclusively to consulting node one-time credential restoration, only Claire Monroe, retains all prior script, and patch authorship no contact with Madison Klein at the bottom. Added a line in bold, failure to respond within 60 minutes will be considered a full rejection of terms. She exported it, digitally signed the file, and uploaded it to a secure Dropbox previously used for quarterly compliance reviews. Then she logged out. The file would appear to them as soon as the backup daemon completed its next sync, which, thanks to her own programming, would happen at exactly 12:45 p.m. That gave them 15 minutes to sweat. Claire leaned back in the motel armchair, stretched her legs, and pulled her hoodie sleeves over her hands. She wasn't angry. Anger was for amateurs. This was posture. This was process. This was a woman who knew her value and wrote the invoice accordingly. Outside, a tractor rolled by. Inside, the last of the dominoes trembled in place. The emergency exec call was scheduled for 1:00 p.m. sharp. Madison made sure of it. She even wore her power blazer, one with the shoulder pads that made her look like she'd eaten a TED speaker, and dabbed concealer under her eyes to hide the sleepless circles. It didn't help. Her voice trembled slightly as she opened the Zoom with a chirpy, "Thanks for hopping on, everyone." No one smiled. The CFO, Harold Gentry, was dialing in from a hotel suite in Chicago. His video was off, but the sound of heavy breathing and a clinking tumbler suggested bourbon was already in play. The head of sales looked like he hadn't left his standing desk in a week. Legal had 2 associates shadowing the call, both clearly fresh out of law school, both visibly sweating. Madison launched into her script. "We've identified legacy gaps in our infrastructure continuity protocols, primarily rooted in a lack of collaborative architecture from prior leadership. We are actively sourcing remediation options, including third-party consultants with deep historical context." Then it happened. 1:07 p.m. The client dashboard, Larkwell's holy grail, the portal through which millions of dollars of services were delivered daily, went dark. Completely. A black screen, no error message, no spinning wheel. Just gone. In the executive Slack channel, notifications exploded. Client can't access their portal, where's the financial dashboard? Germany team lost all analytics feed. Who took the site down? Harold's bourbon glass slammed audibly. "Jesus Christ," he growled. "What the hell is happening?" The head of sales leaned into his webcam. "Tell me Claire's involved in the fix. Tell me you brought her back." Madison's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Then, from the VP of product, softly, bitterly, "You fired the wrong person." The call dissolved into shouting. Someone yelled about breach clauses. Another executive asked if they could just turn it off and on again. Legal tried to mute the thread, but it was like pouring water on an electrical fire. At 1:23 p.m., Claire's phone buzzed again. Voicemail. She didn't answer, but she listened. It was Madison. "Claire, hi, look, I know you're probably upset. Please, we're in over our heads. No one can get in. The clients are freaking out. Greg says we'll approve anything. We'll make it right, okay? Please, just come back." Claire stared at the motel wall. A patch of water damage above the air conditioner looked like a screaming face if you tilted your head. She didn't cry. She didn't laugh. She just felt. For the first time since this spiral began. 17 years. 17 years of code, coffee, canceled vacations, 3 a.m. patch deployments, and being told to just be a team player. 17 years of fixing things before anyone noticed they were broken. Being invisible, essential, disposable, and now? Now they remembered her name, now they begged, but she didn't feel triumphant. She felt hollow, because no one had stood for her when it mattered. Not Greg, not legal, not the board. She was only worth listening to when everything collapsed. Claire closed her laptop gently, placed it beside the flickering motel lamp. She didn't reply, not yet. At 7:59 a.m., the sun crawled up over Larkwell Systems like an executioner stepping into the courtyard. The lights were on, but nothing inside the building worked. Not payroll, not vendor portals, not even the damn vending machine app Madison insisted they switch to last quarter. The compliance window for quarterly financials ticked down to its final minute. 8:00 a.m. Silence. Then, ping. A crimson alert slammed into the inboxes of legal, finance, and the C-suite all at once. Filing failed. Deadline missed. Penalties incurred, $3,175,000.74. Attached was a breakdown from their regulatory reporting system. Every line item flagged red, every timestamp marked unable to authenticate, every fail traceable to Claire's old architecture now sitting dormant. In the elevator, the CEO, Mick Paxton, known internally as PowerPoint Mussolini, was already mid-rage. He'd spent the night pacing his penthouse condo, dictating venomous voice memos and threatening to call his contacts in DC. Whatever that meant. When the elevator doors opened to the executive floor, he stormed past reception, bypassed his own assistant, and threw open Madison's door so hard the acrylic empathy in action plaque fell off the wall. "What the hell is going on?" he roared. You know how many contracts require on-time compliance to stay valid? Do you know what happens when the Federal Oversight Board sees us fail 2 quarters in a row? Madison stood stiff behind her desk. Her hair, usually a helmet of polished waves, was tied back in a panic bun. Her blazer looked slept-in. Her mascara was traveling south. I've been in touch with legal. We're drafting something. Mick slammed his hands on her desk. Who was Monroe? He demanded. Madison blinked. What? He pointed toward the IT status report on her screen, where the words route at Monroe Local Protected Override had been circled and read by 5 different people. Who the hell was Monroe? She swallowed hard. She was IT. The words barely left her lips, but they landed like a guillotine blade. Mick stared at her for a long moment, then muttered, "Get her back, or start cleaning out your desk." He turned and left without another word. Downstairs, legal finally received a reply from the external inbox they'd been refreshing for hours. Subject: engagement terms from Claire Monroe at ProtonMailCom, forwarded by her counsel. The email was simple. Cold. Our client is open to a limited engagement with Larkwell Systems, pending acceptance of the terms previously submitted. Full payment will be required in advance. All work will be conducted remotely. No access shall be granted to or communication initiated by Madison Klein during the duration of engagement. Legal waives all future claims of intellectual property ownership for previously undocumented proprietary scripts authored by Claire Monroe. Attached was the same PDF proposal from the day before. No discounts, no warm intro, no pleasantries, just business. The kind of business you offer once the begging starts. At 8:37 a.m., CFO approved the wire transfer. They didn't even haggle. By 8:42, the money hit Claire's designated holding account. And still she waited. She finished her tea, watched the wind toss trash around the parking lot outside the motel. She could see a plastic bag doing circles in front of a dented pickup truck, caught in some sad little ballet. Then, at 8:50, she flipped open the ThinkPad again. Logged in. And for the first time in 3 days, Larkwell's heart skipped a beat, then blinked back to life. But she didn't speak. She didn't need to. They'd already said everything, every scream, every plea, every dollar. Now she was the one calling the shots, and her silence had never been louder. Claire walked through the front doors of Larkwell Systems at exactly 10 o'clock a.m. No badge scan, no receptionist nod. The security guard, Darnell, bless him, just stepped aside and muttered about time. She was dressed in black from collarbone to ankle, sharp blazer, clean lines, 0 frills. Her hair was tied back in a no-nonsense knot that screamed litigation, not reconciliation. No laptop bag, just a slim metal case in her left hand and 17 years of swallowed thunder under her skin. She didn't go to her old desk. That desk, if it was even still there, had been looted for parts the day after she was fired. They probably gave the chair to some junior analyst named Skylar who thought cron jobs were a fitness app. No, Claire didn't want that desk back. She walked straight to the boardroom. Legal was already waiting. 3 suits on one side, 1 empty chair across the table. No Madison in sight. The chief legal officer, Andrea Voss, stood as Claire entered. Miss Monroe. Claire nodded, sat, unlatched the case. Inside was the root authenticator, still wrapped in its original anti-static sleeve like some holy relic recovered from a war they pretended never happened. Andrea slid the printed contract across the table, already signed by the CEO, CFO, and coup. A notary sat silent in the corner, waiting for the final signature like a priest at a shotgun wedding. Claire picked up the pen. She didn't read the contract again. She'd written it, one signature, slow, unshaking. Then she reached into the case, pulled out the drive, and plugged it into the boardroom's auxiliary terminal. The room lights flickered, a soft whir, then green lights. One by one, monitors across the office began to chirp awake. Payroll synced, CRM unlocked, compliance server timestamped a retroactive filing fix within 32 seconds of deadline. Outside the boardroom, the floor buzzed, Slack messages reconnected, phones rang with relief. A junior dev literally clapped. Claire stood. No handshakes, no thank you, no LinkedIn selfies with inspirational captions about resilience in adversity. She turned toward the hallway, and there, poised like bad karma and pumps, stood Madison. Shoulders tense, eyes hollow, holding a branded notebook like it might shield her from divine judgment. Claire paused, tilted her head, walked past her until they stood side by side, then turned just slightly, enough to let her voice carry. Smooth, even, precise. Next time, Claire said, eyes fixed forward, don't confuse silence for weakness, and walked. Behind her, Madison stood frozen, like a crash survivor realizing the flames are just starting to spread. She didn't move for a long time, but when she did, it was to reach for a box under her desk. Claire never saw it. She was already outside. The sky was overcast. Her car was waiting. She drove away with no music, no calls, just the quiet hum of a woman who had let the empire fall. Not out of rage, but out of principle. Because they never listened, until silence cost them everything. Appreciate you sticking around, you legends of the break room. Subscribe for more chaos. Let's make your old managers spill their coffee in fear.